I will call this Tigard City Council and Local Contract Review Board meeting to order. Deputy City Recorder Raimundo, please call roll.
Mayor Lube,
Here.
Youth Councilor Vogel,
Here.
Councilor Shaw, Councilor Singh,
Here.
Councilor Wolf,
Here.
Council President Hu.
Here.
Thank you.
Did you call the youth counselor? Did I miss it? Okay, I did. If everyone will please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. City teammates or council, any non-agenda items this evening to add?
Nothing from us, Mayor.
Okay, seeing none, we will move on to public comment. If you would like to provide public comment by phone or video, please log in or call in now to get into the queue. The phone number is 503-966-4101. And anyone wishing to comment in person, there is a sign up at the front of the room. And we will start with follow-up to previous public comment with Assistant City Manager Nyland.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So at the October 24th Council meeting, we had 4 people provide public comments. We received 1 written comment, 1 in person, and had 2 call in to speak to Council. The written comment spoke about the community grants and was quite thankful for the opportunity. The in-person commenter talked about time, place, manner, specifically asking about adjustments to time around seasons. And they also stressed the importance of storage for those who needed to move from site to site. As for the callers, one of the callers also spoke about time, place, manner, expressing concern about fires caused by those experiencing homelessness. And lastly, we had one caller share his experience with our request for proposal around additional capacity for our ERP system. For those interested in time, place, manner, Council did have a conversation about that issue during their meeting. We will continue to actively provide updates to the community on that initiative as well as others. And the other commenters also received a response back, either by phone call or by someone from the team reaching out and providing additional information. That is my report for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. We did receive 2 public comments or written public comments by noon yesterday. One is from Beckett Lyons requesting to add a skate park to Dirksen Park. And the other is from Jonathan Clay regarding proactive rental inspection program concerns. We will move on to in-person public comment. We do have 1 person signed up. Jennifer Anderson? Okay, you have very pretty handwriting. And so I do want to let you know, come on up. You can turn the microphone on and it will turn green. And just to brief you, public comment is a wonderful time for you to come and talk to us about your concerns. It's typically not a dialogue. And so you can share whatever information you have to share with us, and you have 2 minutes. Yeah. Can you turn on? Yeah, there's a button right at the front and it'll turn green. There you go.
There. I understand there's going to be regulations for managing property or some kind of regulation, and I wasn't notified or didn't know anything about this. So I manage property, and it is a challenge. The regulations are horrendous. I'm actually from Alaska, where it's not as regulated as it is here. So we have, so many rules, regulations, and laws. And so now there's going to be more laws and more rules and regulations. Is that right?
So it's a program that the council is discussing. We're being briefed tonight, but there isn't any action being taken.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we had to evict someone for non-payment, and it took 2 months and the individual would be screaming "F you" all hours of the night and day. So they regulate us, but they don't give us, we have the obligation and responsibility, but we don't have the authority to protect our tenants. And so it would be nice if there could be an emphasis on that as well. I've had properties where they've had $20,000 worth of damage, 2 properties, 2 units, when we couldn't evict them. And so I had a tenant who was cutting herself because there was an abusive person above. And the person who was being abused wouldn't report them. There's so much domestic violence going on as well. So if they do regulate, maybe they could help us, empower us to protect the tenants from the tenants that are violating the laws and rules and regulations, yet they're protected. So victim versus perpetrator. And that's a little sensitivity in our field that I'd like to give. And I don't know how to do this, so thank you.
Thank you for coming today. Our next item on the agenda is phone or video public comment. Senior Network Administrator Thornburg, are there any phone callers or video callers in the queue?
Yes, it looks like we have one phone caller, Ms. Parker.
Ms. Parker?
Hello. Thank you, councilors and mayor. I appreciate the time of you're listening to me. I'm calling on behalf of my brother who lives on McDonald Street, which, as you know, is a pretty fast-moving street. My brother he gets around by wheelchair and hand cycle, and so he has to cross at the crossing that goes down to the senior center. And many times the traffic do not stop for him. It's really got me quite concerned. I'm wondering if you have any provision for making that a more accessible intersection, perhaps a light or some other kind of device that might make it safer for him. So that's my request. Thank you very much.
Thank you for contacting us today and speaking with us. Mr. Thornburg, are there any video callers today?
None that I know.
Okay, thank you so much. We will move on to the city manager report with City Manager Reimer.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, good evening, Mayor, councilors, members of the community, and my teammates. Just a few updates, a lot of different events happening and some updates on what occurred at events we just had. So the first is, as you know, we have our second Entrepreneur in Residence at the Opportunity Cafe at our library. And Michelle Cruz, who has Cholitas, we have the welcoming tomorrow, November 8th from 5:30 to 6:30 at the library. So all of you obviously are invited, as well as members of the community, to meet our second entrepreneur at the Tigard Public Library. On Thursday then at 10 a.m., we also have, that way I think, an opening, our grand opening of the Alongside Senior Apartments. And so as all of you know, that is going to bring forward 57 one-bedroom units for individuals 62 and older. And so the grand opening is at 10 a.m. on Thursday, the 9th. Also want to thank our Tigard H Mart. They donated 42 large boxes of new Korean language books to the library, which is awesome, as a way to expand our world language collection there. So once again, ways of reaching our entire community. So thank you very much to them for doing that. Also, we had a community member who moved back to the library. And our library reports that very delighted that we had Chromebooks to sign out as their job searching and other things. And also, even more excited, their jaw dropped, it sounds like, as the hotspot is provided with that as well. So once again, finding that way to bridge that divide that sometimes is there and providing people the tools that they need. So thanks to our library team for continuing to think for ideas like that. We have a new event coming up on December 1st. You may have seen some advertisements now. The Festive Fleece Fun Run that we're going to have through our Parks and Rec team and some community partners. So that will be on December 1st at 4:30 in conjunction with the TDA's, the Downtown Alliance's tree lighting event that occurs. Also want to just say thanks to both, to many teammates, specifically our streets and police department teammates that were very present at the Safe Trick or Treat downtown. You may have seen we had multiple city booths set up there over by Symposium, by the Chambers area there. We estimate we had upwards of almost 1,300 people come through our booth there. So just a great way to make connections. And for those of you down there, you probably saw Chief being out on the, being kind of greeting everyone and welcoming to our area. So just a great way of connecting with our community in that as well. And then just two more things. You may have seen a couple teammates out on our hard surface trails recently. It looks like they're kind of pushing a stroller or a buggy. They're actually on all our trails collecting data for the condition of them that will then inform our trail system plan update that will be there. So in talking with one of them today, they said they're probably a little over 50% done. So they're continuing to be out there. They're getting quite a few steps and being healthy as they're working to collect all the information. So if you see that, that's what we're doing, preparing that information so we have data to support the plan that we develop and ultimately bring forward to you. And the last thing is, as Chief and Commander McDonald have been sharing, we're continually looking at ways of recruiting and building our team. And so we're happy to share that yesterday we had the swearing in for Officer Joe Page here. And so he will start his entry-level work and then join the Basic Police Academy in January. His background, he has a bachelor's degree in communication and was a substitute teacher for a while. So welcome to Officer Page to our team. And that concludes my remarks for this evening.
That's, I think, wonderful to hear that he's already able to go in January. Well, I guess that's a great question for Chief, if, the additional sessions are really helping to clear the backlog that the state has. So I will remember to ask that the next time she or Commander McDonald are here. Are there any questions other than trick-or-treating was so fun? Yeah, it was great. All the kids looked like they had a really wonderful time. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda, which is used for routine items, including minutes and approval of contracts or intergovernmental agreements. Information on each item is available on the city's website in the packet for this meeting. Items may be enacted in one motion without separate discussion. Council members may request that an item be removed by motion for discussion and separate action. Today, on the consent agenda, we have a VDI server replacement. Are there any questions, comments, discussion, or a motion?
Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Will the city recorder please conduct a roll call vote?
Mayor Lube,
Yes.
Councilor Singh,
Yes.
Councilor Wolf,
Yes.
and Council President Hu.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The motion is adopted by unanimous vote of the council present. The next item on our agenda is a rental registration and inspection program briefing, and we have Senior Planner Warren here to present the staff report. Welcome.
May we get the presentation up, perhaps? There we go. Good evening, Mayor Lube and councilors. My name is Skylar Warren. I am a senior planner in the Department of Community Development. I'm here tonight to provide an update on the progress we have made in designing a rental registration and inspection program. We have made progress, but still have many important details to figure out before having a complete program proposal for council to consider. Your comments tonight will help us finalize the program design, which we're hoping to bring to you for a vote in the spring. This program was originally identified by the council as the most promising near-term program of a set that generally fall under the umbrella of tenant protections. Those are policies that ensure that Tigard's renters have similar housing security to homeowners and that Tigard's housing stock is safe and livable. Next slide. We are facing a critical shortage of housing across the region and the state. While the governor has set an ambitious target for housing production and pro-housing cities like Tigard have worked hard to remove barriers, the fact is that we are still behind, and recent news suggests we may soon fall even further behind as construction declines across the metro region. We also know that our renters are facing unprecedented increases in their housing costs. These are mostly not related to improvement in the housing stock itself, but the lack of supply. As a result, our renter community is facing increasing economic burdens. The city has been a state-designated rent-burdened community every year since the state began tracking those figures. Next slide. So as we set out to develop programs to ensure that our city's renters are being served with habitable housing, we were guided by some key policies, particularly those from the city's Affordable Housing Plan and the most recent housing needs analysis that was adopted in May of 2021. We also are guided by the feedback we have received from our renters themselves. We have heard consistently from the community in annual rent burden meetings and through code compliance requests that there are issues of habitability in our housing stock. We have also heard the same from tenants' rights groups and from other constituents. Next slide. Oh, next slide. So we have about 20,000 households that rent in Tigard, and they all deserve safe and healthy homes. We know that that's not always the case based on those reports from the community as well as code complaints. We also know that those code complaints underrepresent the number of rental units with habitability issues. We have heard time and again, particularly from our non-English speaking community, that they often do not feel safe reporting issues for fear of reprisal, up to and including losing their housing. It also works the other way. Sometimes landlords are not notified of critical life and safety or maintenance issues in a timely way by tenants, leading to more costly and invasive repairs down the road. An inspection program can help catch those issues early, reducing costs and liability for landlords. Next slide. So before I get into the programmatic details, I want to lay out the core ideals that have guided us in the development and will eventually guide us in the implementation of this program should it be adopted. I should also note the shorthand here, PRI stands for Proactive Rental Inspection, and I'll use that moving forward. So the first principle is that like our code compliance program, we are focused on bringing properties into compliance, not on penalties. Next is that we're focused on ensuring the habitability of rental units. We also want to assist property owners and managers with information and resources and identify any problematic issues. And of course, we want to operate this program with integrity, transparency, and efficiency. Next slide. So there are two major elements to a proactive rental program, or rental inspection program. The first is an annual registration that functions much the same as a business license. Just like if you're doing business in the city and must pay that annual license fee, if you're renting housing units in the city, you would need a license that is annually renewable. And also like the business license, there is a fee that is assessed. In this case, it's based on the number of rental units in a building. Those fees will be as low as possible and will be equitable for all types of situations. The program will self-sustain through fees. However, we know that fees cannot be a burden on our rental housing community. Right now, we're considering a range of about $20 to $50 per unit annually. Registration fees will be as low as possible because these kinds of costs are often passed on to tenants, and the program is intended to support our affordable housing goals. We'll work closely with our internal team and stakeholders to vet our fee structure, and of course, council can make adjustments when we bring the program to you for adoption. The rental registration can help us to communicate with and help landlords as well as tenants. By maintaining a registry of rental properties, we can share relevant city communications and mutually beneficial opportunities. So one example I would give of how we could use this type of registry is to inform landlords about state incentive programs to install energy-efficient heat pumps. So these programs, which were created by Senate Bill 1536 in the 2022 session and are specifically targeted at rental units, provide direct rebates to landlords who replace older HVAC systems with heat pumps. Paired with federal tax breaks and incentives, this rebate program can make the cost of a heat pump actually lower than a conventional gas or electric furnace. Assisting our rental property owners and managers with this kind of information helps us to both serve the landlord and the tenant, who will benefit from lower energy costs, as well as moving our city toward a more carbon responsible future. Also, as it stands, we don't really know how many rental units we have in the city, where they are, and how to get in touch with our property owner and manager community. A registration program can help us better track and provide services to this important group, a group that can help us do better outreach on all city programs to some of our hardest to reach segments of the Tigard population. So the second element of a PRI program is the inspection portion of it. Like many other proactive rental inspection programs across the country, we would randomly select a small number of units for inspection annually. Both the tenants and the property manager would be notified well in advance that their unit had been selected, and a time would be scheduled for the inspection. The code compliance officer would inspect the unit for habitability issues only, so this means you're not going to get dinged for unrelated issues. And the tenant and property manager would both be notified of any corrections needed and given ample time to make those corrections. I know one question that's come up is whether inspecting only a select number of units each year means the program is not making an impact. I listened with interest to your discussion last month regarding the city's red light camera program, because there are many parallels between traffic enforcement and a proactive rental inspection program. We know that there are drivers who violate traffic laws. It would be impossible to cite all of them. However, we have police traffic patrols because the very act of enforcing selectively means that everyone is more likely to drive safely. And as you heard in your briefing on the red light camera program, the benefits of enforcement at the city's selected intersections along Pacific Highway actually result in fewer crashes and a safer roadway, even where the red light cameras are not installed. This is the goal of a proactive rental inspection program, providing inspections and requiring corrective measures to ensure that the city is not just a safe place to travel, but also a safe place to live. Next slide. There are a lot of precedents for this type of program out there, and they scale to almost any size of city. Our most local precedent is Gresham, and we are leaning heavily on their model and their experience as well as their hindsight to build a sustainable and equitable program. There are other examples in the state, including Corvallis, which requires rental registrations but no inspections. And you can see here a list of cities across the country with proactive rental inspection programs that range from 750,000 people all the way down to less than 10,000 people. Next slide. So we know that to build a program like this and make it successful, we need to engage with a lot of stakeholders. That work is ongoing, and it is requiring that we reach out 2, 3, 4 times to our stakeholders. I've mentioned the work that we've done with tenants. We've also reached out to housing developers working in both the market rate and affordable worlds, as well as property owners and managers. Next slide. We held a meeting in January with builders, property owners, and managers to receive feedback on the general slate of tenant protections programs that we had been exploring. In that meeting, the best received of those programs was the proactive rental inspection program. This was also the case with council, and so this is the first program to move to development. The general feedback that we received from those stakeholders at that meeting was that the costs of registrations are likely to get passed to tenants. There was also a concern that inspections should not impede on the city's development approval process. and there was a report from the Home Builders Association that the Gresham program had been successful. As we began to build the basic framework of the program, we also reached out to Multifamily Northwest, the region's largest rental property association, to share with them where we were in our program development and get their feedback as well. The two major concerns shared with us at that time were a concern about the regulatory burden of a PRI program for landlords and a concern about the city's actual need for license fees. We are certainly interested in reducing the burden of this program as low as possible, and we are also being very mindful about the impact of fees on both property owners and their tenants. So we will continue to work to build a program that reduces these impacts to the bare minimum and still delivers a program that can self-sustain. Next slide. So an adoption of a PR program would look something like this. It would require that we add a rental licensing requirement to Title V. That's the title that governs business registrations in the city. That code has been drafted and is undergoing staff review. We would also need to amend the property maintenance code to bring it up to modern standards. So we do have a property maintenance code that was adopted, I think, in the late 90s. It's pretty out of date. So our work to update that to modern standards is underway now. And then lastly, we will need to amend the fees and charges schedule to adopt registration fees and any other associated program charges. Next slide. So our current proposal for an implementation schedule is based on a council adoption action sometime in spring 2024. So working from that as a possible adoption date, we would have then much of the year to do the outreach that we would need to do to notify the public about the new registration requirements, and we would not begin licensing until 2025. Inspections could also begin that same year. In the meantime, we would develop and distribute educational materials to both tenants and landlords. And another reason for that extended rollout is that we want to time this rollout with the enterprise permitting and licensing element of the Tyler project to ensure that we're avoiding duplicative work and providing a seamless customer experience. Obviously, being able to register online through a web portal way easier than having to come into the city to do so. So next slide. I want to highlight that there are some policy questions we are still working through. We're still trying to determine the version of the International Property Maintenance Code that would be adopted to update our property maintenance code. So the IPMC is a standardized code. It's like the building code. It's used throughout the country, and there's periodic updates just like there are with the International Building Code. So we're determining if we should use the current version or a slightly older version. So for example, Gresham is still on the 2012 version of the code. We're also working with stakeholders to ensure that we set those license fees in a way that is equitable and efficient. We want to support small landlords and large alike. We're also considering a partial or full license fee waiver for the first year of the program and what the trade-offs would be in doing so. Again, we're trying to build a program that can self-sustain. And then we want to decide what kind of grace period should be allowed for non-registration. We would still assess, the license fees retroactively, but we want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to learn about the program's existence. And for example, we don't want to penalize out-of-state owner of a single rental property who simply does not know of the program's existence. I'm personally especially aware of that need, as I've been an out-of-state landlord without a property management company working on my behalf myself, so it is at the front of my mind. Next slide. So we're going to continue our outreach to stakeholders over the winter. Once we've completed that and we have a program proposal that is largely complete, we'll return to council for another briefing in advance of an adoption sometime, like I said, by spring. And I know that this slide says that we will be back in December, but it's looking like we'll need a little more time to get those stakeholders together and complete the outreach. Next slide. So with that, I'll end my presentation and take any comments or questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Warren. Questions? Yeah, Council President Hu?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. When you mentioned that there's positive inspection experience and success in Gresham, I'm a little fuzzy on the details on what you consider positive experience and what you consider success.
Yeah, and so following your email from last week asking for KPIs, key performance indicators from the Gresham program, I have reached out to the Gresham staff that we've been working with closely to actually get those numbers. I'm sure that they have them. I don't have them at hand at the moment. You know, the success that we're reporting is the success both from, as I mentioned, the Home Builders Association, from staff, from their sharing of the landlord support for the program in Gresham, and for the non-English speaking community in Gresham. Gresham actually does have one inspector who is bilingual and does the inspections in portions of the city where they are more likely to encounter households who may not have English as a first language, Rockwood, for example. And so I think they've built a lot of trust between that community and the city through that inspection program. And again, I think once both tenants and landlords in that program realize that what's being checked are life safety, health, you know, things like are there covers on the outlets? Are the smoke detectors functioning? Is there a handrail on the stairs? That kind of stuff, and not necessarily is the paint chipped, or I mean, obviously, I guess if there's lead paint, that would be an issue, but they're not cosmetic things that they're looking for, and they're not even really looking for building code issues, except where it presents that life safety, welfare issue. So I'm working on getting you know, hard numbers from their program. I don't have it yet, but I will share that with the council as soon as I have it.
Yeah, thank you. Because when you compare this to the red light camera program, you know, for red light camera, we have solid numbers showing, you know, the crash statistic before and after the red light were implemented. But in this case, what, you know, before you give me the number, everything you said so far is somewhat subjective, right? It's like, yeah, so we have a tenant here who is experiencing hardship and worry about additional burden on landlord. I'm a landlord, but I don't own any rental properties in Tiger. So I share that concern of additional regulatory burden on landlords. And when, to be honest, when Oregon implemented additional landlord protection, I started to get out of the landlord business because I just personally don't think it's worth it anymore. And I'm concerned that additional program would drive more people, especially mom and pop landlord in Tiger, out of the business, and that will actually decrease the inventory of rental properties in Tiger, and that might achieve the opposite effect of what we are trying to achieve. So I think that's just my main concern. I have a science background, so I'm a very number-driven person. So if you could somehow show me the number of any city before and after, showing that, you know, the tenant protection goal is actually achieved, I would really appreciate it. So thank you.
Certainly, and I'll look beyond Gresham as well. We'll reach out to some other cities and try to get some stats from them as well.
Councillor Singh?
Thanks for the presentation. This was really informative, Skylar, and I didn't really know about this type of programs. So I think, you know, after hearing about it, I fully support PRIs as, you know, providing a collective benefit to our city. I think this program is being responsive to our most, you know, vulnerable community members in Tigard. I think it supports in the development of healthier homes, and it's really, I think it's more prevention based, and and equitable. And I think you mentioned about tracking information, like in terms of like AC units or heat pumps and things like that. I don't think there's enough data on that. So I think it'll start tracking, for important data collection as well. So I just want to share my support for this and thank you for the information.
Councillor Wolf?
Thank you, Senior Planner Warren, and great questions and conversation. I think, again, some of the exchange around preparing for this evening, I do like some of the ideas of what have we learned from Gresham and how do we look at some of their best cases and lessons learned. I like the idea of self-certification of some units. So I think, Skylar, what I'm eager to see as you come back is some of that kind of concrete, because I do appreciate the public comment and especially Council President Hu as a landlord perspective of how do you find that balance so we're protecting those most vulnerable of being in a place that's unsafe. While not adding additional burdens and losing more landlords. And that's a tricky dance, and I acknowledge that. So I'm in support, eager to learn more information on how we find that balance. And then this is just at the risk of getting in the weeds a little bit, the International Property Maintenance Code. I guess I'm curious why you would adopt one that's over a decade old versus one that's current. So there's got to be rationale. I didn't know if you could update me on that.
So Gresham adopted the code that was current at the time of their program inception, and they've just never updated it. And part of the reason for that is that when you adopt the IPMC, you don't want to adopt the whole document. You want to adopt the select, elements from it that apply in your situation. There's a lot of additional regulatory language in there. It really is a full model code that's ready for adoption within a jurisdiction. We don't need all of those pieces. We just need the pieces that set standards for property maintenance. And unfortunately, with this document, over time, they've rearranged it so that what used to be section 1.2 is now section 3.4. Things are moved, and so it's not always straightforward to just move to a new edition without doing some extra work to reconcile things. So we're looking at we're looking at the most recent adopted version, but we're also looking at a version one prior, just to make sure that there's not changes in there that we don't necessarily want to adopt, or that we're not too far out on the bleeding edge of property maintenance regulations.
Thank you for the discussion so far and the presentation. I agree with you, Councilor Wolf. I think it's a really delicate balance of ensuring we're not over-regulating, but truly protecting the community and where they live, because I feel strongly that everybody deserves a safe, clean home, that falls under the regulations to live in. And, I think back to when Ken Ross was here and some of the pictures that he showed us, that somebody had to report in order for Ken to go. And it should not get that far for somebody to live in our community. And so I do think that this is an incredibly important program to catch some of that stuff, but hopefully some of the other stuff and the handrails. And as a mom of a toddler, I think of the nightmare of an unsafe environment. And so I want to make sure that when a community member lives in Tigard, they live in a safe home as a basic right of being a community member here. But I do want to make sure that it's not overly burdensome, but that it protects our renters, who I know that there have been changes, but it does often feel as though there's a power imbalance there. I do have a couple of questions. How many inspectors does Gresham have that's dedicated to their rental program?
So they have a pretty sizable program, and they're goal is to actually inspect all of their housing stock every 3 years. That's far beyond what we could do. And I think right now they have between 3 and 5 staff within that group, and they, not all of them are on inspections all the time. Some of them are in an administrative role. What we're talking about is definitely of a smaller scale. We're not setting ambitious goals to inspect every housing unit in the city within a certain time frame. Another difference is that Gresham actually requires inspections of new rental units. It's not clear to me from the conversation that we had if they're sampling those, because most new rental units, especially if they're newly built, they're going to have just passed building inspection. So it might be just that if it's older housing stock, they're inspecting those. Even in those cases, I don't think we want to get into the business of inspecting every single new rental unit. I do think that just a randomized selection of rental units and just the knowledge that the city is randomly selecting units will help both incentivize keeping units maintained properly, but also it'll help us catch those situations where there might be a hazard and either the tenant doesn't know or is afraid to report that situation. Gresham, in terms of the model for the program and how it functions, is a good one for us, and in terms of the implementation, staffing, resources, that kind of thing, they don't scale quite with what we're proposing, which is much smaller.
Is their program funded in such a way that it's self-sustaining, or are they using some of their general budget dollars to subsidize those inspectors?
And I think that's one of the issues that they're running into, is that, because of those ambitious program goals and their desire to keep fees low, they've kind of gotten out of balance. And so what we would propose is to keep the fees low, but also to keep the administrative overhead for both the city and for the landlords low as well. And one of the things that Councilor Wolf alluded to is, we are looking at options for self-certification. So if your property has not received a code complaint historically, we don't have exact program parameters, but it might be if you're under a certain number of units, that you can go through a checklist and you can submit to that to the city, and as long as we don't receive a code complaint, you can continue to self-certify. That lowers our administrative burden, and it also lowers the burden for the landlord. Also allows them to kind of do a little check, right? To go through the unit and actually look at it with new eyes, like, am I checking for smoke detectors? Things that may not always come to the fore of the mind when you enter a rental unit. Sometimes you're just looking at, oh my gosh, I can't believe they painted that. But so I think, that's the major difference between us and Gresham.
Now I have more questions. So with self-certification, I think it's a great idea, but I would also request that the tenant be notified of the self-certification, that your landlord has self-certified that this is a safe, habitable space. Because if they haven't had a code compliance to date, but they're out of compliance, and the landlord says that they are, there's probably the tenant has no idea that they may have this remedy. So I would personally want it to say, your landlord has self-certified that, you have a habitable unit. If you don't agree or whatever, here's the form, or here's how you would report a concern. And I guess my question also, to piggyback off of that, is asking in such a way if there will be any opportunity, because I think the fear of retaliation is a real one. If there is an opportunity, or maybe Tyler will provide it with the rental registration, for somebody to be able to be more anonymous in their complaints, and then that inspection perhaps could go into a different pool that is also pulled from, in order to have that randomized. So it's kind of like maybe two pools, a true randomization and then a subset randomized or whatever way, to really just thinking of that intimidation and retaliation factor. And again, ensuring compliance, not wanting to be punitive, but individuals need to have a safe home. So those are just a couple of my ideas. And then my other question is, $20 to $50 annually feels reasonable. Is it best practice to have just based on unit? Because I'm starting to think, right, like, does ADUs come into place, house, apartment, or even like renting out a bedroom, that all of those different kinds of units are the same price? So are there other inspection programs across the country that maybe have different prices based on type of unit, or are they all pretty uniformly like one price?
Generally, they're pretty uniform in the way that they will work is that, you'll pay a base fee for the first 4 units, say, and then the next 6 units to get you up to 10 is a little cheaper, and it just scales from there. So that, by the time you get to 300 unit complex, most of your units you're paying $20 per unit for them, which is a fairly nominal fee.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
And
I was going to say, I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to thank you for your ideas. I think those are great ideas. And I think to your point about notifying the tenants, we can certainly prepare materials that are in multiple languages, because I think in some of those instances, that information might otherwise be lost to some of our renter community. So thank you for those suggestions.
Yeah, no, I certainly think a couple of languages would be really helpful to communicate. Did my question spur additional questions? Yes, Council President Hu.
Yeah, I think I like the idea of if we do go forward with the self-certification, that the tenant will have an opportunity to respond to that. But I just don't know if we can completely keep them anonymous. I don't know if maybe that's a question for the city attorney to answer in the future, but not right now. Like, can we really keep a complaining person truly anonymous? I don't know, but I don't need an answer right now. So keeping the registration fee low also raises a concern for me that, I just remind me that, council receive monthly new business registration every month. And sometimes I will see businesses in there that's been in the city, I know, for years, and they just register. So that makes me wonder how many businesses in Tiger that do not register. And so coming back to tenant registration system, if we keep the registration fee low and inspection rate low, how can we catch people who don't register? That's just a concern of mine. How are we going to catch people who don't register? So,
well, that's a good question. I mean, I think fundamentally, like any law that's passed, and we won't get 100% compliance. I can promise the council that. I think the question is, how do we respond to a non-compliant situation? And certainly we can build in a fee structure that it makes, that assesses penalties for those property owners who don't register their rental units. But again, we want to be really mindful about that as well. We want to roll that out slowly. We want to make sure that there's just absolutely every opportunity to reach out to property owners and managers to let them know about this program. We don't want to be assessing penalties for non-registration where someone hasn't had a reasonable opportunity to learn about the program's existence. So there's a lot of work to be done on our end, and there's a lot of sort of leniency, I think, in those first years on our part as well. on the registration side. Down the road, I think we can very safely say that someone coming into the city, just like these days, if you're coming to start a business, you should be expected to know that there's a business license fee. With this, you should be expected to know that there's a rental registration fee, and we can assess, penalties and interest for, if say a tenant reports an issue and we don't have it in the registry, we know that they didn't register, and so that can kind of become part of the code compliance case for that.
Okay. Yeah, because I think I remember reading an article recently about some city having this program, but like over 50% of the landlord don't register, and it's a frustration to those who do register. So that's a concern of mine. That in order to properly protect our vulnerable tenants, we do need people to register, right? So enforcement is an issue. So if we don't have a robust inspection system, so.
Are there any additional questions? I think a lot of great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda tonight is a resolution to adopt protocol for public comment, and we have City Attorney Rahala here to present the staff report.
Good evening, Council. So the proposed resolution before you tonight is to adopt rules governing public comment. This would be in-person, telephone, and virtual public comment. The purpose is really just to set clear expectations for respectful interactions at City Council meetings. The goal is to facilitate these as respectful interactions both for the councilors and for the community members. This is a similar approach to the engagement on the city's social media platforms in terms of establishing respectful expectations, non-discrimination, but also recognizing everyone has a First Amendment right to share their views at City Council. So these are intended to be viewpoint neutral, basic expectations for a positive, constructive interaction at City Council. So I'm happy to take any questions. They're pretty straightforward. Hopefully this is a pretty reasonable basic request.
Yeah, I think it's also worth noting that neighboring jurisdictions have had some challenges with some incredibly hateful speech. And I think it's important for us to say that that speech is not welcome in Tigard, and it's not welcome to have a public forum in this sort of way, and to be able to prevent that from happening here or stop it when it starts happening. So I think it's a really important rule or protocol for public comment that we have to just be respectful of each other. I think in this room there's a lot of times that we don't agree with each other, and that's fine, but talking about ideas and not attacking people or identities is really important. So.
Exactly, and that is similar to social media as well, is that we have to have the rules in place in order to enforce them, and so this is just a clear set of expectations that to the extent we can regulate what people say, and again, First Amendment protections apply especially on social media, but to the extent that we can protect speech, this is our aim to do so and make sure that people feel that this is a safe place to be heard.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments or discussion or a motion?
I move to adopt. There we go. I move to adopt resolution number 2342.
I second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, will the Deputy City Recorder please read the number and title of the resolution?
Resolution number 23-42, a resolution of the City of Tigard adopting a protocol for public comment at City Council meetings.
Will the Deputy City Recorder please conduct a roll call vote, starting with the Youth Councilor Vogel for an advisory vote?
Youth Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Mayor Lube?
Yes.
Councilor Singh?
Yes.
Councilor Wolf?
Yes.
And Council President Hu?
Yes.
Thank you.
The motion to approve resolution number 23-42 is adopted by unanimous vote of the council president. There are no non-agenda items this evening and no executive session, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Will the Deputy City Recorder please conduct a roll call vote?
Mayor Lube?
Yes.
Councilor Singh?
Yes.
Councilor Wolf?
Yes.
And Council President Hu?
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned. Have a good night, Tigard.